This is Father Bonaventure Chapman. Welcome to Godsplaining. Thanks to all those who support us. If you enjoy the show, please consider making a monthly donation on Patreon. Be sure to like, subscribe to Godsplaining wherever you listen to your podcasts. This is a special episode because instead of having two Dominicans, we have, as far as I know, only one Dominican on this episode, but we have a special guest here, Mary Rose Somarriba. Mary Rose, thank you for joining us.
So happy to be here. Thank you.
That's great. This is a Guestsplaining episode, and Mary Rose is the editor-in-chief, I think, of Verily Magazine. Some of our listeners, especially those of the XX chromosome variety, will be maybe familiar with you, and maybe men as well. But if you could just go ahead, Mary Rose, and introduce yourself to where people might know you from. You've done, if you look at your CV, working for First Things, working at writing a lot of journalism, receiving awards, the Robert Novak Prize for Journalism. But who are you, and where would people know you from, or ought to know you from?
Thank you, Father Bonaventure. I have worked in some form of journalism or publishing for a long time, I guess like 15 years. And so some people might know me from Verily because we've been around for 10 years. We were founded in 2012, and we were spent most of those years digital. I did not found Verily Magazine. It was founded by Kara Bach and Janet Easter. And I was a culture editor for many years. And then now I'm editor-in-chief. And before that, I was at First Things in New York for 3 years, a little bit while Father Richard John Newhouse was there, which was a blessing. And then before that, I was at the New Atlantis, which was published by the Ethics and Public Policy Center back in the day. And it's now, I believe, independent. But anyway, so I've just been in journalism where it intersects with ethics, and that really, like on the topics that matter. And I really do think that it's the meeting the conversations of the day where the debates are happening, or where we need to help improve the culture, is where I keep being called in my work.
So that's great. I remember I taught business ethics at Providence College, and you're a graduate from alumna from Providence College. And of course, business ethics, everyone goes, oh, business and ethics, haha, what do those have to do with each other? But I think actually journalism is pretty similar, today at least. I mean, it used to be, when George Orwell was around, I think it might have been, more respect in a way. But now, because of, say, some late unpleasantness, as you have it, I wonder if journalism and ethics has a similar, business ethics, journalism and ethics, whether people, you get a sense of people saying, oh, how can you be ethical as a journalist? Do you get a sense of being a journalist today is a little bit different? You have to actually tell people, no, actually, I do care about truth, and I'm not about just political machinations.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I definitely see all over journalism. I see, things that, we all see agenda-driven content, but it's really, really bad. I think in women's media, we see a lot of content that isn't honest. It isn't straightforward. We see, people saying, try this fad diet, or here's how to get your ex-boyfriend back in 10 days, or something completely unhealthy and unhelpful for the average woman. So we have only healthy relationship advice that is expert driven on what actually helps relationships. Or we have in our style section, we have unphotoshopped people,
Yes.
which is, it's sort of crazy to have that be a thing, but it's unbelievable that elsewhere in media, but especially in women's media, there are women photoshopped in such a way that they can't even have been that way naturally. And so a lot of women that has made a difference, is caused a lot of even life-threatening problems over the years for different women with eating disorders. And now we all see the social media and a lot of online media with even more imagery that's altered and not real is hurting the sense of self-esteem for young girls and women and causing a mental health crisis. And so that's so I do really feel there's an ethical dimension, especially for women's media. But throughout media in general, the journalism used to always be about the truth, and very frequently we do see articles that say, "Oops, correction! This, we completely didn't research this before we typed this," whatever publication it is. I see that all the time. Like some intern was just rushing with their opinion in mind and wasn't researching the facts, and that's something we take very seriously at Verily.
Yeah, as it might be no surprise, my footprint in the women's journalism area and women's magazines is slight. Although some of the brothers, I'm assistant student master here, and some of the brothers recently, they must have had like free subscriptions, so they subscribed me to Vogue. So every month or something, I get a giant Vogue thing.
Ooh.
It's all right. It's not the worst thing I've ever read. No, just kidding. I throw it away immediately.
You could
So
pass it over. If I was
yeah,
local, I'd take it.
but you might. So, but you're talking a lot of the women's issues and things, and you might think, well, I mean, we've been living with feminism for 70 years. Women are in much better shape now. Like, what's the need? It sounds like you're kind of down on this, sort of that women are being misrepresented. I mean, that was in the 50s and the 40s and the 30s, but women have everything today, right? They're fairly treated, they're fairly understood. There's no more kind of pressure on them, oppression, this kind of thing. I mean, this is post. Come on, this is post Betty Friedan. This is post all that kind of stuff. And you say it's worse than ever. No, carry on.
I do think that, I don't know how, it's still there. Like, there's still problems. We still have problems. And it seems that some of the proposed solutions, we definitely know from the past decades, only created more solutions with feminism. So, or more problems. They only
Hmm.
created more problems with the attempted sexual liberation and all of that. And now we have big problems with relationships, with all the things that Humanae Vitae warned about actually taking place. And so we do have a cultural problem that is persistent, and it just is showing up in different ways in relationships that don't have commitment, where women have trouble articulating what they want in relationships. They're all different expectations, and yeah, all these things, and we see in Verily, we see them in these comment sections, because we have had a really great, a fantastic helper at Verily who has made some of our relationship articles have really excellent SEO to match up with many of the common questions that women are looking for answers to, like, why
Yeah.
has he ghosted me, or this or that. um, and they Googled these things, and we have these expert written articles that are answering the
Oh.
question in healthy and honest ways. And then these ladies will add some questions in the comment section. Well, should I do this? Or, he says he's divorcing his wife, but he really loves me. Should I this or that? And it's really, really sad to see some of these questions. And there's women, they're looking for answers, but they
Mm.
won't find the answers, good answers elsewhere. And so in women's media. So that's really hard and sad to
Yeah.
see, but we want to meet, those ladies where they're at, and give
Yeah.
some healthy content.
Well, I'm a big fan of John Paul II, St. John Paul II, and his kind of masculine and feminine genius aspects. And I think he'll be more important on the theology of the body in terms of the sexual complementarity, understanding truly what it means to be a man and a woman in the 21st century than he was in the 20th century. I think, as with all things, they explode and then they take some time to digest. It's like when you open a present at Christmas, it takes you a while to actually figure out what's going on to build it. I think that's
Hmm.
true for JP2's account of man and woman. He created them. So I'm, yeah, I'm inclined to think that we need to talk more specifically about men and women as men and women with their own particular issues and concerns. This is downstream of Edith Stein, who I'm a big fan of too. Um, so, with women's concerns, what are some of the things you see that are important? What are the cultural lacunae that in their women might be dealing with today? That things that might not be talked about, but
Mm.
everyone kind of knows. What maybe yeah what Verily is doing, what it's aiming for, and then we can go later and say got some advice for some men, because we have a lot of men listeners too. But
Yeah.
let's do the male advice later. Let's do the what does Verily see as some of the kind of key issues in the culture with women today that you're all concerned with and that you're all offering help and assistance for?
That's a great question. So, I mean, there's so many things. One of them that just sprang to mind when you were mentioning that aren't much discussed elsewhere. So, since I was culture editor for years at Verily, it was my favorite thing to find women's the hot, or of course, many of the hot button issues relating to women. Abortion, birth control, sometimes even more, more controversial somehow, and pornography, which I did a journalism fellowship on, human trafficking. Sexual assault, and all these things are very hot button with a lot of opinions, people with a lot of strong opinions on. And we have touched on them over the years at Verily through women's stories. So a woman who has an
Mm.
unplanned pregnancy, and keeps the baby and it turns out okay, or a woman who has had an abortion and doesn't feel like anybody's publishing her take on it, or her take is not voiced anywhere. I really do think that there's like a couple things that topics that I think just haven't been explored yet that I'm really
Yeah.
excited to work on it Verily a little bit more and get some more research done on, and that includes like the abortion pill, because
Hmm.
I've heard many anecdotal stories of women having horrible experience with those, and I don't think that they are sharing sharing those stories because there's shame involved, or there's just they're afraid to tell people for whatever reason. um, and so there's that. There's also the birth control is causing so many side effects and depression for so many women. I used to just think it was, well, if you're taking it for health reasons, it's not a sin, according to the Catholic Church, but it can
Hmm.
help. I used to think that before I
Hmm.
worked. I forgot to mention Natural Womanhood for a couple of years as editor. It's a website that has to do with fertility health, and I learned
Yeah.
so much more that hormonal birth control is basically poisonous. It is fake hormones, and it doesn't do any good really. It can remove some symptoms, but it doesn't solve any problems for women. And so the side effects that women experience are outrageous, and medical associations are recommending it for girls as just like a part of healthcare, starting at 13, 14. I've heard women in colleges graduating saying, I've been on this for 10 years. And I got off and I'm like, oh my goodness, I have feelings. I feel more myself again.
Hmm.
And I'm not, anyway, I feel more in touch with my body. So there's a lot of those kind of stories that I think nobody else in women's media is touching
Yeah.
on. That we think they're very, very pivotal areas. There's also, just simply the sexualization, objectification in media
Hmm.
everywhere, and pornography, and everybody acting like it's fine, and yet we
Yeah.
know, many women deep down don't feel like it's fine. If their partner's using porn, they feel like it's a betrayal or like a infidelity, and that's been explored here and there, but generally mainstream, messaging is that women just deal with it, get used to it, and then here and there we hear that there's trafficking in pornography, and Pornhub had to, sorry about that, we'll close those videos and leave the others, but there's
Yeah.
no information on the packaging to know where this stuff is coming from, and a lot of abuse is taking place, and we know that. We just keep on trying to turn a blind eye culturally, but Verily won't do that. So we do have
Yeah.
some strong issues where we do go deeper, and throughout, and it's not just all gloom and doom, because those are really tough topics. We also like
Hmm.
to always pull out the hope. And for instance, in trafficking, I would really find some really strong women's voices about how they've overcome and how they've survived, how they've started groups to help others, and it's been really powerful to hear their stories.
Yeah, and I like the story aspect. I think people get narratives, and you can't just give people propositions as much as Dominicans would like to do that. You need to actually give them human faces. Jesus came incarnate as a person, not as a proposition. Anyway, the interesting part is that the list you're going through, the abortion, birth control, some of these things, contraception. Oftentimes, I think people would consider that a kind of, oh, those are Catholic only kind of topics. Like, well, that's what Catholics believe. But do you get a sense that actually, as you work for this natural womanhood thing, Verily is not a Catholic? I mean, it's not a Catholic. It's a godless magazine. No, it's it's not specifically a Catholic magazine. So, but yet we generally associate, at least I would always associate with kind of strong, issues around contraception and birth control, abortion, as being the Catholic Church's kind of natural family planning, natural womanhood. That, but do you get a sense actually that it's opening up a bit, that it's not just like Catholics and a few crazy evangelicals, but actually other women, all women of good faith and no faith whatsoever, are interested in saying, hey, maybe not the pill stuff, maybe not these other things, maybe not what the culture is telling me, you know?
Right? Yeah. There's a lot of different angles to come at the truth. And there's the faith, and there's, religion, for all sorts of religions. Women of faith growing up in all sorts of faiths, traditions, they'll find a lot of comfort in Verily, because a lot of our readers are faith based. They say that they
Sure.
find it helpful to not be, given content that helps them, makes them stray from their values or whatnot. But yeah, we are aiming to reach everyone no matter where they are, and these are issues that are perennially in on women's minds and hearts, and they're out there and they're grappling with them, and they're and I really do feel it's charitable for us to go into those dark, spots where women might not feel anyone understands them, and to welcome them to open up, or publish a woman's story, and then they might feel understood, because they've read, someone else has been there. And a lot of
Hmm.
the most horrible scourges on against women, I think are often filled with shame, and so women might keep in the dark and think no one understands. And we just want to remind women, no, you are more than what happens to you, and you can rise above. Our big tagline is less of who you should be, more of who you are, which is sort of, um and a part of me that's like, the should aspect, we don't mean you shouldn't have moral improvements, and we mean who,
Sure.
we're trying to help you feel more who you are. And we're not telling you, change this or change that about yourself, in terms of lose weight, or
Yeah.
get a high paying job and break the glass ceiling, or quit your job and stay home with the kid. We're not telling you anything about what exactly you should do. We're telling all different women's stories that will help you feel like you're with a girlfriend, God willing, and feel like um
Yeah.
you're welcome to reflect and think about your own life and how things might apply to yours and whatnot.
Yeah, I think so. I kind of like, so I'm a philosophy professor, and surprisingly enough, the philosopher who I think is your motto, who gives you your motto, actually is Friedrich Nietzsche, who would not have generally thought was a big fan of
No,
women,
no.
but he's one of his key phrases, of course, mottos is "become who you are." Become
Oh
who
my
you
gosh,
are.
I hadn't thought of that. I was thinking of the Edith Stein. The woman, the world doesn't need what women have; it needs what women are. We've
Yeah,
used
that's
that a
great
couple
too.
times. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, both. Yeah,
become who
exactly.
you
Both.
are.
But yeah, Nietzsche, but Nietzsche and Stein are both excellent.
That's
They're
so
a
fantastic.
little
Look at
bit
that.
different.
Yeah.
But there we go. So I just, yeah, I would love to have. Yeah, that's fantastic. I have this picture of like Verily magazine with like a kind of a very interesting logo of Friedrich Nietzsche with the giant mustache. It says like "Become who you are," Verily magazine. I just think people, yeah, I would love that. Most of your viewers probably wouldn't, but it's welcome to postmodernity. You get to mix all this stuff with a fragmentation and some simulacrum and all that. Okay, let's talk about a little bit about maybe the culture's messaging. I think so much of our lives, we think as as Catholics or as just intelligent people, that we're in control of what we take in and how we exist in the world. So you could do kind of a Heideggerian, being in the world, kind of how we dwell and what gives us our meanings and such. And we think, well, obviously most people just are passive to the world, and so they do whatever. But we, we're listening to Godsplaining or reading Verily magazine, like we are totally in control of the meanings that constitute our lives and such. And that's just false. That's got to be false. Because if you're being pounded day in and day out by subtle messaging and things, you are going to naturally be imbibing these cognitive dissonances. And we just let them soak in. I know this is true for my example of like how I relate to technology and such. Well, I'm a Dominican
Hmm.
friar, and I couldn't possibly relate to technology in a bad way. But I have been known to look on Instagram at things, and even the way I kind of comport myself, you could have this. So I'm not immune to this, let alone anyone who's actually in the world, I would say. So what I'm interested in is um, what messaging. It could be subtle, but yet sometimes the subtle things are actually the most dangerous. What messaging does our culture, American culture in general, I suppose, give about women that actually is something you all fight against, and verily, and something that you say, remember, ladies, this is not true, this is false. And everyone, but either people aren't willing to say that out loud, or they're not even aware that that's the case. What kind of subtle messaging do you find from this culture that's kind of giving us our way of dwelling in the world that we ought not to have as women?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's so many. That's a great question, and I do agree with you. Technology really pushes it along much faster. We're just
Hmm.
consuming all this content all the time. I think a couple messages come to mind. One is that women are objects, just objectifying content. That women are
Hmm.
objects, like some of the, just that, and they're meant to be looked at and care about looks, like primarily. not
Yeah.
their mind, not their heart, not their soul, but their outer appearance. We see that, throughout the world, not only in the fact that people are editing photos, but people are
Hmm.
changing their faces. People are getting modifications, physical changes to their bodies to try to reach some kind of ideal that is a never ending quest that will never be reached. And just dissatisfaction with who they are. We also see, I just feel like, so there's a little bumper sticker kind of line I created for Verily that says women are not objects to edit, because we just want to
Mm-hmm.
remind people about our origins as the first women's magazine that doesn't Photoshop women, which really gets a lot
Yeah.
of women excited. They can hardly believe it. They're like, oh, it's been too long.
Yeah.
But then we want to remind them of that, but also we're just reminding ourselves we are not objects. Just remember that, like, we are not, and we don't want our daughters to think that they're
Hmm.
objects. And
Yeah.
so, and there's also a line that one of my colleagues wrote recently, when she was just talking about our mission, and she was saying, we women often feel they have to hustle for their worth. We don't. So the false belief, I would say, is we have to hustle for our worth as women. We have to, do this and this for our looks, or we have to reach this kind of
Hmm.
status as in our work, or we need to be married by an XYZ, like age, or we need to have this many children, we need to homeschool, or we need to go, send them to the Ivy Leagues, or all the things. Like, the women we have to do all things perfectly. And what a lot of women don't feel their worth. They don't feel that they're
Hmm.
worthy, that God made them. They don't feel like a daughter of God. And so we are trying to just, we know that each woman is a beautiful, um God made, beautiful woman, who comes with her own unique gifts, her own unique calling. And so we just want to help women feel themselves. We just want to help them, treat them like a girlfriend who we care about. We may or
Yeah.
may not, like, have disagreements at times, but we speak with charity, and we share our experiences with each other, and we just want to be there for each other, not let the other one feel alone. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, I do really think objectification, though, is one of the big
Yeah.
things. And granted, I did that pornography fellowship, so I have I have read too much on that, but I do feel that that's one of the biggest problems facing women today, because we aren't really seeing ourselves as full people, and it's throughout
Yep.
media.
No, I think that's the objectification. It's an old saw, but it's an old saw because it's true. There is this. I mean, when you see commercials, for instance, it is just striking that almost everything that's being sold has like a beautiful woman attached, regardless of the thing. So like, and it's all the kind of stuff we learn in marketing, and if you take like psychology 101 or something, but knowing it doesn't change it from being not being on there. But like, oh, if there's a beautiful woman by that car, if I have that car, psychologically I'll do. I mean, we all know this, but it's all over the place. It's just everywhere. Like, or in airports, I don't watch much. I don't see many commercials on TV unless the Buffalo Bills are playing. But like flying, you see a lot of, there's just all these ads, and it's always like beautiful smiling women who I'm sure are totally photoshopped, unrealistic. I mean, there's just no way you get hair like it's those. I remember those Pantene, those hair commercials for
Mm-hmm.
shampoo, and the hair just looks spectacular. I'm thinking, not real, must have destroyed it. That's just, it's hair doesn't work. Human hair doesn't flow like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so there is this kind of this physical image stuff. I also think you make a good point that um, a woman has to show up in a sense as two people in the world. When women enter the workforce and are more present in the world, um, it's not like we said, oh, I guess women are here, cool, that's fine, we'll treat them like us. No, it's more like, oh yeah, you can be like us, but also you can't be like us. Like, you have to show up, and you have to look pretty and smile and be woman and be really nice. And like, I can be angry. Sometimes I'm nice. Other times I can be angry, and that's acceptable to work because everyone has a bad day. But women aren't really allowed. If you have a bad day as a woman, you're just a nasty woman who should be fired. Right? We don't like her. But if you have a bad day as a guy, you're just a guy. Right? Is this?
Yeah, yeah.
Am I mistaking this? Is
No,
this something
no,
that women
no.
feel?
It's true. No, I really do think, and and it's relational. Yeah, there's all these sort of trends that are common. Like, there's like, men and women have some, we're different by nature. There's Women often are described as more relational, by psychologists and whatnot, and so we
Yep.
do care to fit in, and so we will try to like not be the one who's, you know, bossing people around or whatever, because we know that people perceive us that way. But it's quite exhausting. It's quite
Yeah.
exhausting to be trying to, you know, okay, well, I can't get mad, but even though he gets away with it, my boss, or I can't, if I get up there in power, I can't, you know, look this way or that way. And it's just so many pressures on women. There's another one my husband came up with. He said we Verily should do no Photoshop, no pressure, because there's a lot of pressures on
Yeah.
women, just so many, you know, just in every little instance that are infinite, that we can't even count, that we are so used to we don't even notice them.
Yes.
But yeah, it just came up over Thanksgiving dinner. Someone was telling us that, you know, there's a woman who's very ambitious, and she works in Silicon Valley, and she was saying the girls around her, some of them are so ambitious, but people don't like them, and they think that that you know that they're just,
It's
I don't know,
ambition
crazy.
is, yeah, ambition
Yeah,
is unwomanly. It's
yeah. They said they think she's a psychopath or something, but she says if a man was doing it, nobody would say that. They'd say he's a genius. And so it's really sad to see those things, but we do,
yeah.
you know, we have to just build each other up and remind ourselves that not to worry about everything we can't change.
Yeah, and that's a good. That is the double. That's the difficult part. But women are more relationally more. I mean, well, because I try to tell students this and people that men are we're lesser by far. One, because like we're designed to move rocks, basically. I think in some sort of whereas women are designed to like create people. Like you know, your job is to have people. Our job is to like move stuff. You know, it's like that's what my hand. I don't know. I don't. Yeah. So and two, um, uh, the perfect woman, right, just had to be kept from original sin. Mary, like restart and good to go with grace, of course, right? The perfect man is also God, right? There's not like the new Adam is the divine savior. So it's like God said, you know what? I'm going to restart the woman thing with Mary and give her some grace and give her a little head start, but she's good to go. Man, I'm just going to strap onto you. Like I'm coming. That's not how incarnation works. But like I'm coming down. We're doing hypostatic union, okay? Because I'm not. I don't need to hypostatic unite with women. They're, you know, but I do need to hypostatically unite with a man because you guys cannot get it together. So I think women are just more complicated and more interesting to him, and they're because they have to do a lot more. You could say so. There are more expectations on you than, and some of that's just part of being a woman, I suppose. But we do put too many expectations on women, especially in this culture, to try to. It's unfair, I would say, to expect if you're gonna let women be around and be equal partners and things, then you have to treat them like equal partners. But this turns into now what I'll call the advice Mary Rose says section. So there are a number of they probably left by now. No, they're still watching because they're excited to hear what you have to say about this. But there are men that are listening to this show, Thomistic men, and they want to know what can I do to help out women. So, what do you have any advice for men today, from a woman's perspective, to say, hey, you know, maybe, maybe this, or maybe that, or like, here's how you could, you know, this kind of thing. Any thoughts on advice
Yeah.
column for men? I'm just gonna set
Yeah.
this up for 30 minutes and let you rock.
Okay. I mean, I would get John Gottman's book, I think it's Man's
Hmm.
Guide to Woman. I would get
Oh,
that. That's a really great book. It just helps to, so women might feel, you know, we are very vulnerable and beautiful creatures, and men may struggle with experiencing things that, you know, they don't experience things the same way we do. For instance, I remember when it started, it said women fear for their safety like X times a day. Men fear for their safety like maybe, I don't know, it was way, it was like not times a day, it was maybe times a lifetime, or, you know,
yeah,
like my husband couldn't remember the last time he feared for his safety.
no,
I mean, those are just quite different life experiences. And so I just think it really helps to sort of help men to understand women. And John Gottman's such a great therapist. Many people already
Gottman.
know
Okay,
him as the marriage therapist that helps men
okay,
and women in their communication. Yeah, so that's a big one that just helps to understand better. I would also
yeah,
say, you know, just don't watch bad stuff that objectifies women. Don't
yeah,
watch pornography. and if you're in a relationship, don't do it, and don't make excuses for it. If you got a bad habit, if you got an addiction, get some help, because it's out there. Our articles can pass people on to good resources.
Yep.
What
No, that's. I
else?
just want to stop for a second on that one. We can do some other ones, but that pornography use, and it's so. I was thinking about this the other day. That we think, oh, well, they didn't have it back in the day. There was much better people back in the 50s, you know, and it's true. The pants were higher and the ties were narrower, so they were better people. But they weren't involved in pornography as much. But part of that's because to do pornography back then, as far as I could tell, you had to go to like a shady store and ask for like a creepy magazine, and sort of, it was really hard. Whereas today, you basically don't have to do anything. Like you have to do things not to be involved in
Right.
pornography with if you're using computers or anything in some fashion. And so the temptations are just insane for people. But and you can make excuses for that and say, oh, you know, well, it's just so hard. But it's good for men to realize that actually you're not just hurting yourself in pornography by giving yourself, you know, inappropriate attachments and, you know, ill using the gifts that God's given you in your sexuality and your personhood, but you're also damaging women by doing this, because you're building in not only to that system but also just into the framework, the mentality of this, so that it is an issue of assaulting women, even though you're avoiding them in a sense. You're actually damaging all sorts of levels. So I think the pornography one is really big, and of course moralism, like just don't do it. You got to have strategies, got to have help, got to have people, but to take it seriously, like it's not a little private matter. It's actually like a
Hmm.
societal matter that will destroy all of our hopes to have good families and good people if we don't figure out how to deal with this. Am I wrong
Hmm.
about that? Is that too
No,
extreme?
you're right. I think you're right. And it is really hard. And that's why there are a lot more resources now, thank God, that
Yes.
are developing. And yeah, we've linked to some of them at the bottom of articles. There's like 12-step groups, there's specialized psychological, kind of
Mm-hmm. Yep.
therapists and psychologists that help people with addictions, both men and women. There's also partners, if they women who, or wives, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, who find their partner has an addiction, how to cope with that, not to bite his head off or whatever, but like how
Yeah.
to, help him know how you feel about that. And yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, we're running out of time here, and I don't want to take too much of yours, Mary Rose, but it's been great to chat about these things and enter the world of women's media, which I don't spend much time in. But where can people? So let's give the spiel here. What can people go to
Sure.
find more about your resources? Where they can find you, Verily Magazine, the kind of different ways, modalities of the magazine, this kind of thing. So here's your chance to push product. Go for it.
Sure. Yeah. It's verilymag.com. So that's VERILYMAG.com. That's our website. We have articles every day, every weekday, and we have a lot of great content. Relationship. We have health, we have fashion, we have lifestyle, we have career, we have culture. And so all sorts of great content for women. We also have a print magazine that is just new this year. So we started in print but went back to digital back in like 2013. We just this year published our first time ever. We have a 10th anniversary issue in print, and we have our quarterly magazines. Spring, summer, and fall are out, and winter's coming out soon. We really are trying to
Wow.
build up our subscriber base.
Yeah.
So we really encourage people to go subscribe at verilymag.shop, or you can find it on our website or Instagram. Verily Mag. It's Verily Mag everywhere, and Verily means truly. So we're just trying to,
Mhm.
help
Yeah.
women be their true selves, and depict women truly without any alterations, and yeah. So we really would love your support, and also we're a nonprofit. I should mention, we just this year turned into a nonprofit, which
Oh, great.
we've always been mission driven, and it just is the right fit. It actually, and it's a 501c3,
Mhm.
IRS approved. Any donations are tax deductible, and we have way you can also donate online as well if you just want to get this in the hands of more women but don't have someone, don't need it yourself, or you're a Thomist and you don't have any, you just want to pass this out. You can donate on our site, and we can get those magazines out to people.
That's great, Mary Rose. We'll put some of those links down in the show notes, and it's a good time for the holidays to to give the gift of Verily Magazine, and that's spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
So God bless you for the work you're doing there to build up a culture not only of life, as JP2 said, but more specifically a culture of men and women, and the work you're doing there. So thank you for joining us and chatting for a little bit on Godsplaining.
Thank you.
Now I turn to you all. Thanks again to all of our supporters who can also support Verily. If you'd like to give to our work, check us out at patreon.com/Godsplaining. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter. Is that not Twitter anymore? It's X, I think. And Instagram. Like, subscribe, leave a 5-star review, send us gifts. Visit godsplaining.org to shop our merchandise and get dates and information for upcoming Godsplaining events, so like retreats or daily day events, this kind of stuff. We don't do daily like Verily does, but we do things. So know of our prayers for you, and please pray for us, and we'll catch you next time on Godsplaining.